And so here's the L.A. Times. Front page story, I believe, of the L.A. Times newspaper today. This is from J. Brady McCullough. I invited him to come on today's show with the timing of when we had an opening compared to when he was available. Maybe it's going to be tomorrow. This is from the L.A. Times. Is the Pac-12 really this bad? Why the league has no TV deal without USC and UCLA? Now, some of what is written by J. Brady McCullough is also been things that we've discussed, or The Athletic, quotes from other people's sources, CBS Sports, you name it, ESPN, pretty much almost the same thing, but now there's an article in the LA Times.
Yeah, and this is breaking it down for the fans of the schools out there. Of course, the LA market won't care about the Pac-12 as much once their two schools are gone next year, but there's a lot of people, of other alums that are probably invested in that live in Los Angeles, and here you've got the conference just not making any headway. And, to me, I think if you just ask simple questions like, okay, the Big 12, for much of as a mess as the Pac-12 thought it was, Brett Yormark went out and got a TV deal in a hurry from the time that he got that job. George Kliavkoff has been on us for a lot longer, and he can't. So what is the difference, and what is the Pac-12 not admitting about itself that is getting in the way of getting this done? Because they should have gotten it done before everyone, because theirs was expiring before everyone, even before the Big Ten. The Big Ten got their big, gigantic, huge deal, and the Pac-12 was still technically before them a little bit, and they still didn't get it done. So why? Well, it started with USC and UCLA, clearly, especially USC, not really wanting to get into it for a while. And then once that happened, they've still had this time to do this.
They did not see the Big 12 jumping ahead of in line. No one saw that coming.
No, and
it created, oh my God, and I don't think anyone realized the vacuum it might create of the lack of ability to get games on regular linear TV.
And my point is the Pac-12 should have known, don't wait in line. Like, at once, yeah.
I mean, like you said, though, who saw them jumping ahead of who saw Brett Yormark doing that? And this is exactly why I was asking what I was asking to start the show, and I guess it was confusing, but, the fact is this is another day and it's gone on, and there is a side that will tell you, well, it's fine. This is the regular way. Remember, they take Christmas holiday off. We heard that BS excuse. Oh, well, it's because of this reason. Oh, it's because Oregon and Washington are leaving. Oh, it's because of this. So I'm simply asking the question of, about the expansion side of it is, is SMU and San Diego State what they're needing to cook this recipe up finally, because that's what the ingredients are needed? That's what adds to the flavor, and that's what ultimately bakes the cake? Or is this simply a matter of these are the 10 schools and they're still negotiating? Because if that's the case, then what's the holdup on that side? I'm just trying to figure out what the delay, if there is in fact a delay, which there certainly appears to be, what exactly that's entailing. Is it negotiating the fact that there's going to be a couple more joining you and you're trying to figure out how that works? Is it just simply what it appears to be, that there really is trouble in TV land and there's not room? Or is it something we're not even thinking of? I'm just at this stage not even trying to dunk on anybody or say, my side won or anything. I'm just sitting here looking at it neutrally and going, okay, what is taking so dadgum long at this point that we're sitting here yet another week's, in hitting the midway point, and we're looking like we're probably going to get to next Monday and still be talking about this exact same thing. And I understand that there's a timeline longer. Like, nobody's saying that, hey, we're going to have something done by March 7th. I'm just simply trying to figure out what is spinning behind the scenes that could be causing this to drag out far longer than anyone expected.
That there's not a number.
Right.
That there's a number that is so low that's why they can't release it.
Which flies directly in the face of a ton of people, right?
It seems
like it would, yes. And that's my whole point. Then so obviously, speaking confidently doesn't mean you're speaking truthfully. And I don't know, I've just seen a lot of confidence that I'm starting to wonder if it's just built on shaky foundation and it's, there really isn't a life raft coming.
In the end, if the Pac-12 announces a new deal that includes the 10 remaining schools, and whether or not it includes anybody else to that mix, and they're in that $30 million or even upper 20s or early 30s, lower 30s, then they're fine. To me, then they're fine. They move on, whether it's with San Diego State or with SMU. I think that number what they want to know what the number is what is that number before you add 2? And then if you feel good about it, then maybe you add 2 to then also add a couple of, as someone mentioned, whether they carry the markets or not, at least the footprints in Dallas and also San Diego.
Yeah, and I get the footprint piece. I mean, I do understand that. I was just looking at it more from television terms and not so much they like, hey, you can have a Pac-12 convention in Dallas. I wasn't looking at it that way, but that is another way to look at it. And I don't think it's obviously the driving force, but it makes sense. Although, how much ground are you planning to cover, and how are you going to hold on to that ground 5 years from now? I mean, that's the question I would have. Like, what is your long-term vision? Okay, you added Dallas. Okay, let's just say that happened. You added San Diego. What's the plan 5 years from now? You know what I'm saying? Because
and that's why your Mark is trying to look at other alternate revenues. Right. He's already another step, but he was already cut in front of him, right? Now he's working on the next part of revenue flow, whether it's adding and or the basketball part of it with whoever it might be, including Gonzaga. And so I don't know. None of us know the final result here. None of us do. I wish to God, even if it's good news or bad news for anybody, I just want to know the information. Good luck with it.
And ultimately, one of the things that the Big 12 has that the Pac-12 doesn't is, okay, 5 years from now, I mean, this is not 100% sure, but the Big 12 has 12 schools that we want to be together much more surely than the 10 schools in the Pac-12 will still want to be together. Those 12 in the Big 12 have a more vested interest in sticking together than all the schools in the Pac-12 do 5 years from now, especially if there's, the Big Ten gets back in the water, like you said, 5 years and say, we're going to expand and this and that. The Big 12 has a better chance of sticking together so they can think about a second TV deal about, okay, what happens in 5 years after the playoff revenue and this? What can we start planning? How are other revenue streams and this and that? As where the Pac-12 just can't even get to this point because what they don't know is that 3 years into this, if Oregon and Washington are getting low numbers because they're on streaming mostly, they're going to be like, well, I mean, we're not even going to come to the table next time.
The whole thing is if they get a number and it seems to be satisfactory, will everybody sign a grant of rights?
Well, and that's why I think it's an interesting topic. And I know people hear this expansion at this point and are like, just give us the result. But the reason why the result's fascinating, folks, is because it sets up the entire rest of the future of college football. Like, we already know there's 2 breaking away, basically. There's going to be 2 that are on their own land, their own planes, all by themselves with big old mansions. And then there's a couple that are just trying to simply survive and keep breathing the same air, right? That's basically where we're headed. And there's probably not room for everybody that's got a room right now. And so that's why I'm just curious about the long-term strategy of like, okay, you got a TV deal done now. But then, all right, I think we know Brett Yormark's sort of overall grand vision. They plan on the Big 12 being the 3, seed as far as the conference totem pole goes. And yes, a very large gap above it and number 1 and number 2. And so for the people who are Big 10 fans or SEC fans, they're just writing off like it doesn't matter anyways. Like it does, not to you, but it still does because they're not just going to vanish. Like schools aren't just going to vanish entirely and all of a sudden it's just a 2-person world as much as it may be seeming like it's headed towards that direction. So I'm just like thinking out loud of, we know Yormark's vision. They went and they grabbed the 4 schools that they did. Bowlesby did that. And since he's come on, he's talked openly about Gonzaga or flirting with the Pac-12 schools or flirting with the West Coast. And now we know the Pac-12's, potentially looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 schools. And we know a couple of who those schools might be. And we kind of figure who a couple of the others are as well. And I'm just wondering if they had that same long-term confidence and grand vision and plan of, pivoting and being a basketball conference or feeling like they can continue to compete. Because right now, this result that we've all been waiting on and talking about, it seems like it's a very temporary one. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel it's as temporary with the Big 12. Not that they're safe and they're going to make gazillions of dollars, but it just seems like there's a more intact long-term vision there as opposed to this one where it's like, let's just survive for another day, and then about the year from now, like, forget about that. We'll get there when the time comes. And that's why this TV deal, taking as long as it is that much more concerning.
And also the grant of rights.
Yes.
Will anyone, even if the Pac-12 has a number, are they going to sign, will all 10 teams sign a grant of rights? Then that could delay it again. Nope, we're not doing it. Okay, then what happens? Like, what if a school or 3 or 4 say, we're not signing that? What do they do?
Yeah, because, again, You could beat the overall number, but if your if your distribution is not what everybody else's is, that's another thing. Are you really considering, okay, yes, the Big 12 makes 32 per year and we're going to make 36. Great. Beat them. Ha ha, losers. But the Big 12 is on networks and you're on streaming.
If it is,
if that's the
or
case,
most of it on streaming.
Right. If that's more and you have less actual over-the-air TV time, then 5 years from now, has your exposure dropped a level? And part of the deal you're going to have to make is it's not like you can just put the lower end games and the non-conference games on streaming. I mean, obviously the broadcast you're going to push as much as you can, but everybody has to get their fair share. But when you start, throwing some marquee games on streaming that lose 3 million viewers because they went to that spot, how do those schools that lost the 3 million viewers they would have had feel? And when that happens once a year over 5 years, you get to the point of, okay, this was a marriage of convenience and now it's over.
The chat room, there's so many